we were having so much fun and we were having so much crack because we just wanted to be there. And that's what the club is about.
Welcome to Throwing Stones. How are you?
Jeremy, I'm super. It's great to see you again, by the way.
Yes, thanks everyone. For those of you that don't know, we recorded this before and there was a technical issue, which meant we've had to do it again.
Listen, I'll tell you what now. Look, Jer, I can tell you that I'm never going to be as good as the first time because you'll tell everyone I was unbelievable. So I don't know if it's going to be as good as that. But I will say to you, and you were saying, geez, I'm so sorry. I'm telling you now, I've done that like 3 times at least in my career. Richie Sadler went over to Mick McCarthy to do a huge interview for Second Captains and he had to do it 4 times. So it's not the first time that you record something, it doesn't work out. So pleasure, man.
Yeah, well, look, I'm absolutely delighted to get you back in. It took a bit of negotiation with your agent. He was kind of more keen for you to appear on Celebs on Ice.
Yeah.
So
I lost my ice skates though, you know what I mean? Like, so we couldn't make it happen.
Not Savage forked up the cash and look, we got you on. So no, I'm absolutely delighted. Hugh, the country knows you primarily as sports broadcaster, commentator. I know you as the Metallica obsessed teenager across the road.
Yeah. To be honest with you, like I'm a bit I'm feeling a bit kind of weird being on this podcast. You've had club legends of which I've listened to, like you've had KV on, you've had Andy Keeley on, you've had Niall Savage on, and obviously Kev Lewis. You know, I don't know what it is about my playing career that you're interested in kind of divulging to the nation. To be honest, I'm not, like you, for anyone who doesn't know, you lived across the road from me for a good few years. Like I'm not even the best rugby player on our road, Jeremy. You know? Like there's you who is better than me. There's your brother Andrew who's better than me. There's Adam Devereaux who is better than me. There's my brother Pierce who's been picked for the 20s for the last 14 years.
That's right.
Who's better than me. So to be honest with you, look, I hope I can offer you something, but it's not for my playing career that you offer me.
No, absolutely you can. Actually, there is something you can offer me right now, and I'm glad you mentioned him, Adam Devereaux. When I was 8 years old, myself and Adam got into a little scuffle, right?
Yes, I remember.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remember it, because to this day, Adam is convinced that the reason I won the fight was because of outside interference from Hugh Cahill.
Right, okay.
Now, Hugh, my maths, you're about 12 years older than me. So that would put you at about 20, 21 even when this fight occurred.
Yeah. And there's nothing more I enjoyed in my life than going down and officiating fights between 13-year-olds. That was just what I did at the time. Hopefully people don't judge me for it. But anyway, go on.
Can you just confirm that you didn't actually get physical and you didn't engage in street fighting with an 8-year-old boy? I confirm, Jeremy, that you were the toughest dude that I'd ever seen in a fight. And as much as I love Adam and I love Robin and Rosemary and Dermot Devereaux and Leslie Ann, he didn't know what he was getting in for when he picked the fight with you. And so I didn't have to do a thing. We were playing football on the road. If you remember, Derek Swan, myself, Des, and it's weird that I remember this. But yeah, you two lads got in a fight and I just stood back and said, Adam, you have no idea who you're after picking a fight with here. And you were a man of very few words at the time. Which is it's kind of ironic now that you're here doing the series of podcasts and you've been brilliant at it. And I've no doubt you're going to be brilliant in the future. But at the time you said very little. And I think all it took was about 3 or 4 words from Adam and you absolutely made shit of him. And I said to myself, Jesus Christ, there's a tough little dude there. That's all. We can actually stop recording now. That's all I wanted to get. That's all I wanted to get from your confirmation.
But if Adam's listening to this, Adam, I didn't do a single thing. All we did was sit there and watch as you kicked the living daylights out of him. I went, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to send Pearson to a fight with Germany. That's all I knew.
No, Pearson beat me. So we'll get into the kind of the bones of the discussion here and the rugby side of things. Each decade, Hugh, has its own team that dominates the opposition. You look at the 1950s, Real Madrid. The 1960s had the Green Bay Packers. The 1970s had Ajax. the 1980s belonged to the Greystones under-8s.
Correct.
Tell me about that team.
And you know what? It's amazing this hasn't been reported more widely, to be honest with you, Jeremy, because I can honestly say to you now, and like I've watched Greystones rugby teams for years, and when I started watching them, if you like, my dad used to take me down to the rugby club, myself and my brother used to go down, and you had the likes of Brian Rigney, you had Tony Ward, you had Paul McNaughton, you had Reggie Corrigan, you had all the greats and the goods of Greystones who were held in pretty high esteem and they were flying high in Division 1. But the most successful team of that era was the team that I started playing in at under-8s level, with Michael Harnett, David and Stephen Flynn, Conor McNaughton, Ronan Willis, Alan Toner, Nicky Malone, Brian O'Donnell. And to be honest with you, you know, we were unbeaten for 4.5 years, from under-8s all the way through to under-12s. Not a single team would touch us for 4.5 years. Now you tell me any other team, I'll take your Reggie or Nick Popplewells, your Brigneys, like they literally haven't got a light to shine on us. We were unbeaten for 4.5 years. And Tim Harnett was our coach. And Tim would bring us to all the blitzes. He'd play us all around Leinster. We'd go to Sea Point, we'd go to Terranure, Blackrock, you name it. We absolutely destroyed every single team for 4.5 years. It was a run like no other. And I know the club probably had based their future finances on the fact that we were going to literally dominate the league when we transferred to senior level. And that's how good we were. Tim Harnett was our coach. I wouldn't say he was the most tactically astute coach in the world. All he said was, Hugh, would you pass the ball? Nicky Malone, would you pass the Flinners? Would you pass the bloody ball? We never did, but still we somehow managed to win games for 4.5 years unbeaten, which was incredible.
Unbelievable. Hey, talk to me a little bit about Hugh or Tim Harnett and like guys like him that put so much of their spare time into making the club, making the youth section what it was. I mean, it's amazing effort that these guys do, and it often goes unnoticed.
Well, it's like you wouldn't have the rugby club without it, Jeremy. To be honest with you, like Tim was my first coach, and obviously I grew up and went to school with Michael, right, as well, and all of us, like the Flinners and Alan Toner and Dave Fitzpatrick, Conor McNaughton, Willis, we all went to school together and we all hung around with each other. But Tim was our first coach, and that was our introduction to rugby. So, you know, if you think about some of those guys and what they've gone on to play in terms of Greystones, obviously Conor McNaughton went on to do really great things. He, obviously a bit injury prone. The Flintons as well all played the first. Michael Harnett, all those guys. If our first coach had turned us off rugby, we all would have gone different directions. And like Tim was just one of the best guys and nicest guys that I've ever met in my life. Michael's a chip off the old block as well. I actually met him. I was out for a walk with the kids and the dog there a couple of days, and I met Michael, and he's after losing the shit load of weight. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's down swimming with the Flynns every morning, or he's on the happy pear diet or whatever it is. But like that was our introduction to rugby at 7 years of age, and we loved it. Like we absolutely loved it. We just had a really good team, which obviously helped. But we had a coach who made us love the game, and like I can't speak highly enough of what Tim did for us. We'd all sit in the back of his blue Mercedes, and he'd drive us all around, I guess, Dublin primarily. But like Tim just made us love the game, and we were kind of lucky that we were all kind of thrown together, and we were all kind of reasonably good. We all played different sports as well. Like I think if you'd asked all the guys, we played football down in Darcy's Field. We played for Air Oak as well. Played tennis, a lot of us, and we just were kind of lucky that we got this team together that was really good at what we did, but also we had just the most fun doing it. And like I remember sitting in the back of those the back of the car with Tim and coming to a blitz, and we'd be destroying all the opposition, and then we'd sit back, whatever, and Tim would bring us for a bar of chocolate on the way home. And that was the highlight of my youth from 8 to 11 or 12. The first time, in fact, Jared, that we actually ever lost a game was going up to De La Salle Palmerston, and we lined out on the pitch as we always did. So here we go. Here's another team we're going to put like 25 tries past. And we look up, and this guy ran onto the back pitch. He was about 6'3", and he stood in the back, kicked it out in the De La Salle Palmerston gear. And I remember turning around to Mick Harnett and said, "Mick, who's your man there?" And Mick said, "It's just one of the parents." I said, "Oh yeah. Ref, would you mind telling your man to get off the pitch there? We're about to start." And ref said, "No, he's playing." Your man was 6'4" years of age at 12. right? Stephen Quinn was his name. So we kicked off. Nicky Malone kicked off, got down into 22. Your man Stephen picked up the ball, and he literally ran through our entire team and scored the first of what was 5 tries in the day. And they beat us, I think, like 7 tries to 5 or whatever it was. But that was the first defeat that we had ever had as part of that team. And that guy, Stephen Quinn, just literally drove us bananas for the next 2 years. Like, we tried everything. We put the 2 Flynns on him. We put like Stephen on his left leg, David on his right leg. We'd make Harnack clothesline him over the top, Ronan Willis going into the middle. We couldn't stop him. Like, I think his balls dropped when he was about 7 years of age. So like, he was a freak of an athlete. And that was our first taste of defeat. It kind of stopped us in our tracks a bit. But yeah, I mean, look, it was an incredible team. We had such fun playing with it. But Stephen Quinn pretty much broke up that team. Off we went to secondary school after that, and we had to learn how to accept defeat. So that was it.
Stephen Quinn, if you're out there, give us a shout out. See what you're doing nowadays.
He's probably still the same height as he was when he was whatever 12 years of age. But that was I guess that was my introduction to rugby with all those guys, and it was as good crack as you'd ever have in a pitch. And as I say, like, we just so happened to have a really good team together, and it was great.
Yeah, it stays with you forever. It's brilliant.
It does.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's great to hear. You graduated anyway through the age groups. You didn't do under 20s, I know, because you went off to college.
Yeah.
But you came back to Greystones, and you're a part of a really good J3 team.
But so I went to college in Waterford and played kind of down there 20s level and came back then. And yeah, I came into the junior section and we had a really good side. Kind of thrown together. Simon Marr was the captain. With the likes of Barry Keogh, Mick Hanley, who retired from the first team in Greystones, former captain, was there. We had Jason Mullins in our second row. We had Richie Southern, Marzi, with Barry Keogh, Johnny Bell, and myself, Trevor, Ricky Wogan, Garrett Donnelly. We just had a really, really good side. Willie Byrne, James Perkins, Richie Power. Just a really good side of guys who were fantastic rugby players, most of them, but just at the stage of their careers where they wanted to be able to play and then join a few points afterwards and not do the training, I guess the first required at the time. Aaron Higgs, by the way.
Really?
Aaron Higgs, who wasn't good enough to make the 20s team at the time. He was dropped from the 20s team, came into our side. I'll never forget it. On the back pitch in Greystones, he was surplus to requirements for the 20s. We had a game against Clontarf, a really good side. And Higgsy was playing 12, I was playing 10. Stephen Griffin was 13. And Clontarf won the kickoff that we had. They basically passed it to their first centre, who was about 6'8", about 16 stone, a former first player, got the ball, and Higgsy buried him in 3 pieces. Ambulance called 5 minutes later, the man was carted off. But that was our team for that year. And we went all the way to the final, won the league that year. We played Wanderers in the semi-final. But just a brilliant mix of guys who had been there, done it for the first team, and also wanted to kind of play their part for the junior team. And it was fantastic. It was great.
It's so important, isn't it, to have junior teams that mix of experience. So you're a young guy, you're in your early 20s, but then you've also got the guys coming back down, like Jason Mullins or Mick Hanley. I think you can't have all of either or. You have to have a blend.
Exactly.
And kind of leads me into my next question, and that's the culture of junior rugby back then and the influence of the likes of Vincent Byrne on it. I mean, you experienced it in its heyday. What was it like?
I tell you, it was purely down to Vincent Byrne. I know the lads that were part of it won't mind me saying this, but like Vincent was the guy who held the entire thing together. Not just from a rugby perspective, but we all worked in the bar for Greystones, whether it was behind the bar, which I did, Ricky Rogan did, Trev. If you're down the door with Dooler, Podge, Kev O'Kelly, the lads who are harder, obviously, and able to stop lads getting in that we didn't want to get in. But Vincent Byrne put the whole thing together. And the deal was that, like, if you played junior rugby for Greystones, you worked for Vincent and he looked after you. Certainly for me going to college in Waterford, before I kind of came back full time, I would come up a few weekends and I'd say, Vincent, look, I need a bit of work. I'm a bit short of a few quid. He said, oh, come on, here, work for me. Put me on a Friday, Saturday night, whether it was a 21st or a christening or a wedding or whatever it was. But Vincent, everybody played for Vincent. Like, and I'm not just saying that. Like, Willie was on our team, and obviously Willie has his son, and everybody loved Willie, but everyone played for Vincent. And he had a hold on guys who just respected him, who loved what he was doing for the club, and the club would not have been what it was if it wasn't for him, because we would go down and train, say, on a Wednesday night, and we go back into the bar afterwards and we'd have a few pints and we sit there 11:30 and then we all go home. We play at a Saturday or Sunday and then we sit there again in the evening time and have a few beers, and Vincent would he'd talk stories with us, and everybody just wanted to help the club, but help the club through Vincent. Like if it had been somebody else, and like I know obviously Justin is there now and he's done a brilliant job, but the club lost his way for a few years. But Vincent Byrne was the junior section, and he was the lifeblood of the club. And the guys like us who were never going to play for the first, or guys who did play for the first and came back, he was the lifeblood that kept us all coming to the place, wanting to be there, to play for the club and have pride in doing that and win as much as we could, but also to socialize there. And he drove that atmosphere, and he drove not just what we had in the junior pitch with the teams that we had. And Vincent would ring guys. I remember Richie Sutton get a call from him. Like, I think Richie Sutton hadn't played for Greystones in 4 years. And Vincent rang him up and said, could he come down and play for us? And like at the drop of a hat, straight back down. That's the effect that Vincent had in the club. And playing alongside Willie, Mick Murray Sr. as well, those guys, Dwayne Kelly, like it just made you want to play for the club, but also want to go up and talk to them and be around them afterwards. That's the effect that they had in the club. And that's why Greystones was so special. Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it was. And you know, that was down to Vincent. And he was a father figure for a lot of us. Like he honestly was. You know, for people who don't know, like Vincent would have grown up in an orphanage, and like he would have talked about this freely with us, and he would have had a tough childhood, right? And but his three boys and like Anto and Willie and like they would have literally drove the club to be what it was. They did all the hard yards as Willie still does. But Vincent was the guy who everybody respected and who everybody wanted to come back and play for and stay behind to drink with. And it's literally because of him. And like it so happened that we all got on great. Like, you know, you go up there. I remember sitting there with the likes of Barry Keogh and Richie Power and Ricky and Dwayne. And you'd sit there till like 1 and 2 in the morning sometimes when you'd be up at 6 o'clock the next morning for work. But we were having so much fun and we were having so much crack because we just wanted to be there. And that's what the club was about.
Absolutely, yeah.
And honestly, like, you know, for me, Vincent Byrne was Greystones. And now Justin is Greystones, and he has taken over that mantle, and it's brilliant to see.
Something that you're very fortunate to go on was a junior tour. Valencia.
Valencia. The Greystones Canoes
was that year? Was the Canoes?
The Canoes? Yeah, we went. I did a couple of tours to Valencia. So basically, you know, poor old Rodolfo, like he was our full back, you know, on the Dre Tuesday fours for years, and
legend.
And Rodolfo, like, you know, he missed home. And he had a big influence. He was one of the drinkers with us every like Wednesday night and at the weekends. And he said, "Hey guys, you know, we have this beach rugby tournament. Any chance?" You know, and by the way, this is Rodolfo trying to explain it. His English was great when he came to Ireland originally, but got worse and worse as he hung around the lads in the rugby club. But he said, well, "Guys, we make a trip to Valencia. We come over, we have a good time, and we go play rugby and we drink it out." So anyway, he managed to persuade us anyway after a while. So we went to Valencia, and it was. Honestly, I'll never forget it. We had 2 trips there. It took me about 6 months to recover from each trip, to be honest with you, with alcohol poisoning and whatever was going on. But again, Vincent Byrne led the way. Rodolfo organized all the Spanish kind of details around what was happening. The rugby was absolutely horrible. We were all dehydrated. I mean, look at me. I can't, like Valencia in June, Jeremy, I can't even do Ireland in March without putting factor 50 on. But it was just, I'll never forget those trips. Ronald O'Doul nearly died 1 year from dehydration because he just basically didn't go to bed. He drank beer all the way, no water for 3 days. But it was an amazing trip, both times. Rodolfo got to go home and see, I guess, his a few friends. But it wasn't even about that. It wasn't even about the rugby. It was just about guys that were great pals going away together under Vincent's umbrella. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic.
Yeah, some really special memories come together on tours. Fast forward a couple of years later, you were kind of maybe in and out, like work commitments maybe took over, family commitments took over, as they do for everybody. But you and your esteemed colleagues decided to band together for one last crack of the whip.
Yeah.
And you assembled probably the best junior team in the history of junior rugby at any level in the world.
Well, the best junior team, but also the most unfit junior team you've ever seen in your life. So, so Dooler, Podge, Lyle, Nobby, Neil McGanity, Aaron Wogan, like all these lads came in, Sully, like we just got a really good team together. But guys who I guess who maybe had thought that rugby was on a playing level was kind of beyond them.
Yeah.
As I said, had gone on to families and stuff. But I think each with young kids, Sav, James Perkins, each with young kids, and Jeremy, I will swear this to the day I die. It's amazing what a bunch of lads dying for a few points will put their bodies through to get out on a Saturday afternoon and get a few beers in. But yeah, we got, like, that was our last kind of year together. I know that Victor McGanity made, if you go and check his tax records for the year, made about €740,000 that year from putting my back into place, knees back in, shoulders, everybody just to be knitted back together on a Monday morning. I mean, we all couldn't tie our shoelaces on a Monday because we were so right. But again, it was such a special year because I think we all thought our playing days were over, and we all kind of come back and said, right, okay, great, let's just do it for one last year. And we managed to win the league, and we did it with a bunch of guys like Hoppo, again, just brilliant guys who loved the club, who were brilliant in their day. And it was just such a special time. But the Saturday afternoon beers, like,
that's what it was really for.
That's what, yeah. but the stories, the reminiscing, like, that's what it's all about. And that's what, again, Greystones is, like a bunch of guys who would have played at every single level. Some of them the very, very top level, not me, but like just coming back together for one last year with small kids saying, like, Jesus, we get out in the house on Saturday afternoon, a few points. And it was so special. Barry was our coach, Barry Byrne. And Barry was just phenomenal with us. Brilliant. And and everybody adored Barry, because how could you not? Like, he gave Lyle a load of shit because he was his future son-in-law at the time.
That's right.
Yeah. But like, Barry and Mick as well were just fantastic with us. And like, it was the perfect blend of guys who just wanted to be there, still had that little bit left to give, not the most fit. So it was kind of 10-man rugby at times. So well done to Sully and also to, the lads who just kind of made it tick over. But it was a special year, and it was my last year. Like, I'm still not right after it. I had to stop playing five-a-side soccer after that. My golf swing is never the same. Some people say I'm always shit at golf, but it was just a special year. And like Sean Collars as well. Not for Sean Collars kicking over the points that we needed, we never would have got there. So
it's incredible. His goal kicking is out of this world. And he just shrugs it off. He doesn't
Jeremy,
care.
He can do nothing else except kick the ball over the bar. But he's literally, the only reason we picked him is because he kicked the ball over the bar. But he was the big part. But it was an amazing year. It was an amazing year.
It was. It's funny actually how it kind of came full circle. You were now the older crop of guys coming back down. Whereas when you were in your early 20s at the J3s, it was the opposite. One thing I have to bring up is anyone who I've talked to, and I said, I'm interviewing Hugh Cahill, and they said, I said, any stories? And everybody just said, high tackles. Yeah. What was your? I played a match. I played a match with you, Hugh. The only match I think we ever played together was that year, that J4 year that you won the league, and we were playing Barnhall. I was playing the centre for some reason, and you were playing fullback, and you did a classic high tackle and guarded. And Barnhall won by a point. And after the game, we were dejected. Everyone was really quiet in the dressing room, just sitting there. And the Barnhall captain, I think, came in and was like, lads, listen, great game, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. McGann says, you should be thanking Hugh Cahill.
You know what, like, Jared, you know what? It's one of those things. I'd like to defend myself here, but I did way too many high tackles. Defensively, I wasn't the best player in the world. Some people say offensively, I wasn't much better. But I will say my claim to fame was beating Johnny Bell in a race, right? And I was standing over. That is literally my greatest achievement on a rugby pitch, is burning Johnny Bell in a training ground match on the outside is my greatest claim to fame. One thing I've always wanted to do is play in the centre with Dooler. who I love to bits. But like last year that you mentioned of us winning the league, whatever, I played in the centre with him. I called a switch with Dooler. He was playing 12, I was playing 13. And he got the ball. Now, like, Jeremy Guscott knew exactly what to do when Will Carling was coming back in to flip the inside pass. Unfortunately, Dooler, because, he convinced himself he was a centre, when in fact he was a number 8 and probably actually, like KV, a prop. He threw this pass that, like, Inspector Gadget wouldn't have caught, and the switch never worked out. He maintains to this day, Jeremy, that it's his fault. Like, I mean, what can you say? Like, the lad had no arms whatsoever. So, Dooler, if you're listening to this, it was absolutely your fault. I ran the right line. But what can you do?
You're getting a lot of stuff off your chest here tonight.
I've actually I have a few more things. Do you mind if I say
like Father Ted?
Exactly.
Now on to liars. We got to talk about your brother Pierce, absolute legend. What does the rugby club mean to Pierce?
It's everything to him, to be honest with you, Jared. Like, I'm continually just blown away by how people are with him, how people treat him, how he's one of the lads, whatever group of lads he happens to walk into in the bar or any dressing room in any given day. I'm continually astounded by just how good people are to him. Like Pierce, for everyone who knows him, hasn't got a bad bone in his body. He's a very easy and simple way of looking at life, so much to the point that he doesn't understand how people can do wrong by another person. Like, it doesn't equate in his brain how people can be hurtful or mean or nasty to someone. He just doesn't understand that. So he can't really process it. But the rugby club to him is it's a safe haven. Mm-hmm. It's somewhere that he has been going since he was a kid. I'll never forget at his 30th birthday, the amount of people that came down to celebrate with him that night. And he turned around to me and my mom at the end of the night and said, we said, Pierce, how'd you get on? Great night. He said, yeah, a bit sad. I said, why are you sad, Pierce? My last year of 20s, like, because he associated with turning 30 as being his last year at under 20s, right? But like, that wasn't obviously the case. But like, every year he'd go in under 20s, no matter who the coaches were, they took him under his wing. He'd be the kick and tea boy and the water boy. He'd go on the journeys. They'd drop him home to make sure he got home safe. He'd train with the guys. He'd go up after us, and he just thrives on that. He lives for it. And it's just a mark of the people that have come through the Greystones rugby club. Because, like, I don't know if you remember, Jared, when you were under 20s or when I was under 20s, like, your priorities in life were not looking out for a kid who might be a bit different, who might be a little bit awkward, who might be kind of impeding on you wanting to play the best rugby and stuff. That's not how I remember my 20s. But Pierce, with every group that has come through, and this is honest to God, people say, like, give out about younger lads now and priorities. Every group that has come through the 20s has gone out of their way to look after my little brother. And every group has gone out of their way to make sure he gets home every night, safe and sound, back to my mom in the house. So much so that she doesn't even have to worry. And they look after him, and they include him in the training. They bring him out on match day, and they're phenomenal with him. And like, not to get too philosophical on you here now, but certainly when I was younger, like that, I don't know if I could have had, I guess, that measure of looking outside the box to see what it is you're trying to do to help a kid here who just, his life is Greystones. And when people, give out about younger people now, I find it really hard to listen to, hard to swallow. Because actually my experience is, and Pierce's experience is, that the generations are going through now are so conscious of looking out for people, are so conscious of, people that might be a little bit different or might be need of an arm around the shoulder. And Pierce has thrived on that. And the product is what you see now, the guy who walks around Greystones, who knows everybody, who's confident, who my mom can let go out and say, okay, off you go, Pierce, and doesn't have to worry that he's going to get in trouble or that he won't get home all right. And that is literally testament to the brilliant young people that have come through over the last 10, 15 years in Greystones Rugby Club. And honestly, I can't speak highly of them, not to get emotional about it, but for me and my family and for my mom, I know that Pierce and the rugby club, it's everything to him.
Yeah,
and he wouldn't be the guy that he is today without it. And that's the
well,
way to say.
Tell you what, Hugh, like we wouldn't be the same without Pierce. Like he makes the rugby club such a vibrant place. He makes it so fun. He puts things in context. Like you say, he only sees the good in everybody. He knows everybody's name in the rugby club. Every single person that ever steps through the door, he knows their name. Yeah. And he'll even he'll ask me, how's Andrew? You know, how's your mom? Anybody. He makes it such a great place to be a part of, and I think it's something that
and also I will say, Jeremy, if ever I'm short a few quid, like, you know, if ever I'm kind of like short a few quid, if I want to buy a new whatever it is, what we call it stuff, I send Pierce down to rugby club with a charity form and ask people to sponsor him. So and everybody's really good to that. So just so you know, lads, you've kept me in new jeans and you know, and petrol for the last while, and I really appreciate it. But anyway,
what's the most he's made out of those? A few thousand.
He can buy a house in the Burnaby with the money he's made.
He doesn't even ask. He goes up with the card and the pen, and he just looks at you.
Lyle Hayes and Ross and Craig think they're getting Tim's house whenever Tim decides to get rid of it. But I tell you now, Pierce has the lead in the house. He's already paid for the down payment down in Sherry Fitzgerald and Linda O'Gorman. Pierce has the house paid for already with all the charities.
Brilliant. Oh, it's so good. I got to tell you once. My favorite Pierce story is at the end of the season, maybe 6-7 years ago, and seniors I think had gotten relegated, so there was this like end of season meeting where everyone was going to flesh out and talk about you know, what we could have done better and how we're going to improve next year. And it was a pretty intense meeting. I was in the room, was in the stand, in the dressing room, the seniors dressing room, and I mean it was you know, it was very intense. And knocking the door, and who's knocking? Who would dare knock on the door, first of all? And then it opens up, and it was Pierce, and he says, like him in. Anyway, yeah, of course, go on in, Pierce. If you just sit in the corner there, because like this is a little bit like you might see some angry comments, but it'll be fine. And anyway, back into the meeting, and a phone goes off. Whose phone's that? That's Pierce's phone. He says, hello. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll be there. And he gets up and leaves, assuming that maybe Diane had rang him or something like that.
Yeah.
Then 3 minutes later, another knock on the door, and it's Pierce with a pizza. And he comes in with his big pizza, he fits it in through the door, and he sits there and he starts eating it. And we're all talking about what we could have done better and how we're going to recruit more players and improve the gym side of things. And I think one of the coaches looked over and was like,
kind of made shit of their end of the season.
They said, and this will show how good Pierce is. They said, you know, Pierce, you just the pizza there, you might want it. And he goes, oh, sorry, you want some?
Because that's why your season was fucking horrendous. He didn't even eat it. Yeah, but you know what? Like,
it's brilliant. It's
brilliant. No, it's brilliant. But you know what? That says as much about the lads who allow him into the dressing room and consider him part of the furniture, Jeremy. Like, because honestly, like he, you know, and Pierce is Pierce. Like, you know, what always amazed me, as I always kind of describe him, as he's a bit of a cross between Forrest Gump and Rayman. Like, you know, he doesn't forget things, you know, but also his brain only works one way. Like, you know, and sometimes I think life is easier like that. You know, sometimes I think, you know what, life is easier like that. If you're not predisposed to some of the bad stuff that goes on, or if your brain doesn't compute that, life would be a lot easier.
A lot more colorful.
Yeah, big time.
Want to talk to you a little bit about your profession, commentary. I know the AIL actually had a little bit of an influence on you getting started.
Hugely.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, okay. So I worked for 98 FM for 4 years under a guy called Johnny Lyons, and I used to be sent to Six Nations games to do reports, and that was how I got my start, I guess, doing sports broadcasting. But News Talk, around about kind of 2004, had got the rights for the radio for the Magners League, as it was at the time, if you remember, and they were looking for commentators. So I asked Richie Power, who was groomsman at my wedding and one of my best friends, I said, look, Richie, I want to go and send a commentary demo into News Talk. They're looking for commentators. I haven't done this before. I was kind of 98 FM. I kind of been there for 4 years and I wanted to do something else. So I said, look, is there any chance you come and be my co-commentator on a match? And he said, okay, well where are we going? I said, well, okay, Clontarf are playing Blackrock this year in Castle Avenue this weekend, Saturday. Any chance you come out with me? And he said, look, no problem, man. So Richie came out with me. We went up onto the roof in Castle Avenue on top of the clubhouse, and I set up a mini disc with a microphone with me and him. It pissed rain for the entire game. It was an absolute bog. We got soaked and drowned. But Richie sat beside me and we commentated on Clontarf against Blackrock in the AIL over 80 minutes so that I could send this demo into Ger Gilroy, who was the sports head at the time. So we came back anyway. I got the mini disc together, sent it to Ger and sent him an email and said, look, this is where, blah, blah, blah. Any chance you're interested? So 2 weeks passed and Ger Gilroy got back to me and said, look, Hugh, okay, probably lacks a bit for kind of crowd atmosphere and blah, 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 and the rain and da, 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 da. But he said, look, I think you have something. So let's have a meet next week and have a coffee. So I went to meet Ger the following week and had a chat with him. There was a position just opening up in News Talk to do their breakfast news, sports news in the morning alongside the Eamon Dunphy show. And they needed a commentator for weekends. And that's literally how I started commentating. And honestly, like Richie Perry reminds me of this all the time, and he's dead right as well. Like, you know, you just take a chance on something and you kind of say, well, all right, like if you're going to make something happen, you have to make something happen yourself. And I never in a million years at halftime, as like we were getting soaked, and Richie said, come on, man, let's go. I said, look, can we just finish it out? And for nothing, only that he was there to help me out. Never did I think in a million years that even what we were doing at the time would be good enough to send in and get a position with News Talk and whatever. But it was, right? And Ger took a chance on me. Then 2007, they got the Rugby World Cup rights in France in 2007. I did the World Cup with George Hook for that tournament. We finished that up. I missed the World Cup final because I got food poisoning the night before, but Jesus, that's the worst story I could ever tell you. Literally after that, the following year, RT were looking for a commentator, and George Hook sent my 2007 work into RTE. He was working with RTE at the time. Glenn Callan was the head of sport at the time. Royal Nugent was the deputy head of sport. They listened to it and said, okay. And Glenn Callan met me. And if you remember, 2008 was the recession hit. Mm-hmm. He met me in December of 2008 and said, look, Hugh, I need to bring you in now. So you need to say yes now or never at all, because I will not be allowed to bring another person in. So it's either yes, you take a chance on me and I take a chance on you, otherwise we're done. I said, okay, let's do it. And I was the last person to come into RT. They shut it down for the next 4 years with the recession.
Wow.
And that's what happened. 2011, we got the World Cup rights. I went to New Zealand with Donald Lennon, had an incredible 8 weeks with him. And yeah, I guess
changed your life. Yeah.
It changed my life.
Yeah.
It did absolutely change my life. But you know, Richie Perry agreed on a Saturday afternoon where he could have said, Hugh, feck off, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I could have said, well, sure, look, let's rain, let's not do it. But we decided to do it anyway. We sent it in, worked for News Talk. They got the World Cup. RT needs someone. And that's literally, sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time. You need a bit of luck on your side. And that's what happened.
Amazing. Really curious, when you're watching a game and like say you have to either you're commentating or you have to talk about it in your podcast the next day, how do you watch it? Are you active when you watch it, or is it a passive experience? Like when I watch an international, I'm not really looking to see like the forwards formation or how deep Johnny Sexton is. I'm just watching it and seeing what the score is in the last 5 minutes or something like that. You know?
Yeah.
Like, how do you watch it?
Yeah, no, it's look, to be honest, when I was sitting at home and having a few beers, I watch it like everybody else, right? Yeah. But there's a difference between watching it kind of socially, watching a game with your mates, than me doing kind of research for a match where I'm sitting down and watching a game and trying to, I guess, understand the players and figure out a few things around the match. So it's a different experience, and you know, RTE haven't had the Six Nations rights for the last 4 years. Virgin Media have had it, so I was able to go down and watch with the lads and have a few beers, which was brilliant. But it's been very different, I guess, to previously, and hopefully we get it back now. The contract is up at the moment, and hopefully get it back. But when I'm doing research for a game, it's very different from watching and just having a few points like everybody else. You know, the best advice I was ever given was from George Hook around broadcasting, and it applies to everything. But the Game On show that I was doing on 2FM, or doing commentary for T, or doing the horse racing I'm doing now. And George Hook said to me way back when, I know people have different views about George, but he was always a really good sounding board for me. And he said, look, Hugh, like, if you don't prepare 100%, you'll be found out eventually. He said it mightn't happen for 3 or 4 games, it might happen for 2 or 3 years, but eventually, if you don't prepare properly for a game and something happens that you're not ready for, and you don't have it written down or worked on, you'll be found out. And he said it doesn't matter if you've done 100 good games or 200 really good games. If the 201st game comes and you mess up because you haven't put in the work, that's what people will remember. And that was the best advice I ever got. And I get, for matches for me as well, if I'm sitting down and doing research, I might have 7 or 8 or 9 pages worth of notes. I might use a 10th of it or 1/20 of it. But it's better, as George said to me, it's better for you've done the work and something happens that you have the research and they've done the work there. But if for it not to happen, I'm not using 90%. Right? In other words, just do the research. If it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. But if it does come up and you haven't done the work, then you're showing up. And I guess that's the best advice that I've ever had.
Here's my Hugh Cahill notes. There we go.
Well, I'm telling you, and just for you, right, and for people listening, Jared, because look, you've done a lot of podcasts now with the lads, and I've listened to every one of them. And I'm just going to say this, and you're to leave this in, you have done brilliant research on every person you've done, and you are really talented at what you do. So I'm telling you now, the reaction, I'm in a WhatsApp group with all the rugby players I've had, and ones with KV, with Niall Savage as well. We're all laughing at it, but that's because of you, because you make the conversation and you make it flow the way it has to go. So you've done a brilliant job, and anything I can do to help you out, I will absolutely do. But you have it, and you're fantastic. So I'm just saying, on the record, for everyone listening in, listen, keep at it, because honestly, you're brilliant. You're brilliant.
Thanks a million. Jeez,
and I'm not just saying that because you lived across the road from me. But I'm telling you,
or paid you an inordinate amount of money to.
Yeah, exactly.
No, thanks very much. Hey, one other thing I'm curious about is Ireland are playing Georgia, and every Georgian player's surname ends with Ashvili or How do you remember all their names?
It's like doing a kind of it's a bit like going back to school and studying for a subject. Really, you just have to learn it. Now, there's little tricks you can do. If you go and watch kind of previous matches of players. So if a guy has if he was a bit of a wop top haircut, if a guy has a pair of white boots, size wise, kind of whatever, you kind of get to familiarize yourself with that. But there's no shortcut to doing it. And I guess even commentating on players from different countries as well, I've always been big into languages, which has kind of served me really well as a commentary, but you have to pronounce the players' names how they would pronounce it to their own family. And that's literally the most important thing. It doesn't matter if I'm commentating on Fiji names, right? If Ireland are playing Fiji in the Aviva and I'm commentating to RTE, if I call a guy whatever, it doesn't matter, because nobody will pick me up on it. Very few will pick it up on it. But that's not the point. If you're commentating on players, the least you can do is get their name right. The least you can do is get their name right. And that's going and studying the language and learning that. Say in Fiji, A-N-G is pronounced R-A-N-G. In French as well, the ETS is not pronounced. That's the minimum you can do to get it right. And if you don't do that, I just think you're not doing a service to them, and you're not going to do your job. So George Hamilton again would be a huge man for languages, and he would have said to me as well, Hugh, learn the names of the players by how their own family would pronounce it, and that's how you do it. And study. It's just repetition.
Yeah. Did the homework like George Hook was telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk to you a bit about amateur rugby. It comes up a lot on your podcast with your panelist
Donald and Birch. Donald Byrne.
Yeah, Byrne and Jackman. You're really passionate about club rugby. What kind of direction do you think it's going in? I mean, is it a necessary evil that it's wound down a little bit for professionalism to thrive, or can you see both existing together?
I think now the horse is kind of bolted in a way. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said absolutely club rugby and professional rugby can coexist and actually benefit each other. The podcast Don't Let In will be very kind of vocal about his views on this, and I guess very strong in his views that, particularly where he's from, Cork and from Munster as well, that the club game should play a bigger part in professional rugby. That's not to say that, you know, the divisions down through Division 2A, 2B should play a part, but certainly the top level, if you take Division 1A and say you have the top 8 clubs in Division 1A, that there should be a link between the top level of All-Ireland League and the professional setup. But it has been allowed to disintegrate, has been allowed to be less of a priority as far as the RFU is concerned. I don't think that's a good thing at all. I think now, and a bit like, you know, what I was saying to you earlier on about young guys coming through, Aaron Higgs, yourself, not getting picked for the 20s because you were judged on your 19-year-old selves, not, I guess, the talent that you might prevail. Like, guys who miss out now on an academy contract, who don't get into a Munster Academy or Leinster Academy or an Ulster Connacht, are overlooked. And the place they have to go to is the club game. But the club game is not seen as a stepping stone to professional game. So I'll ask you a question, Jeremy. Munster A, right? Give me one result from Munster A this season so far.
Had they played a game? I don't know.
Leinster A.
I don't know. I don't.
Nobody knows. Nobody's any interest, right?
No one's any interest. No.
Nobody interest. So what's the benefit of that? And equally as well, take a guy coming through an academy system for Leinster or Munster or Connacht or Ulster. Take a loose head or a tight head prop who goes in against in a practice match against an academy team from Munster against Ulster. What's he going to learn? What's he going to learn that he didn't learn in school? Oh yeah, I got the better of this guy. He's also 20 years of age. You set a 20-year-old tight head prop down to Cork Con to scrummage against a guy who's 10 years in the AIL. What's he going to learn? Getting turned inside out and upside down, right? That's an education in the game. And you get him to do that 6, 7, 8, 9 times a season and then put him back in the following year. You're not telling me he's not going to be a better player, that he's not going to learn. I mean, I just think there's a disconnect that was not thought through. And it's really sad to see, because the club game is struggling. And now with COVID and the lockdown, there's guys who are 26, 27 years of age who will not come back to the game after lockdown because they say, you know what, there's more to life than rugby. I haven't played in 2 years. My body's not been conditioned into it, and we're going to lose all those guys. I think it's an unnecessary slip that's been allowed to happen. I don't think it was okay, I'm going to give the benefit of doubt to the people in charge to say it wasn't a conscious thing to let it slip. There are people who would disagree with that, but it has been allowed to slip, whether consciously or not. And I just think that's really sad for the game. I think it's really sad because you go down to Greystones on a Sunday morning and look at the amount of kids, 7, 8, 9, 10, who are starting their careers in their club. Cork Con, Shannon, Gary Owen, like, kids start, and that's where they learn the game. Like, I learned the game with Tim Harnett and all the boys that I talked to you about. That's where I started. Like, if that goes and the club link is lost, what have you got? Like, what have you got left? And you want these clubs to invest in all the youth. You want to put the time in with adult coaches who are volunteering. You want them to get a sense of what the game is about. And then when they get to 18, 19 years of age, all of a sudden, when the club game's not worth a shit. And actually, if you actually are any good, we're not going to allow you to go back and play the club that you started a game in, because you're going to be kept in an academy system and you're going to be wrapped in cotton wool and play an A game that nobody gives a shit about, or an A game that nobody knows the result about. Is that what rugby is about in this country?
Yeah.
It's not. And I don't know. What can you do to turn it right now? I don't know, but it's a pretty damning indictment of where we are. That's my view.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, Hugh. International rugby. There's so much been made of. It's funny, when we recorded our first episode, Ireland had lost a couple of games, and their offload count was like 2 offloads in 3 games or something like that. And what our narrative in that was, Irish rugby is terrible. And,
bit like Dooler in the centre, like 2 offloads and 148 carries. Dooler.
But now, since then, Ireland have beat England. It was an amazing game, you know. I think often we kind of we whatever the last game you see, that's your kind of the folk memory of where the state of the game's at. But let's just say, for argument's sake, tomorrow you were made CEO or chairman of World Rugby. What changes would you make to make the game more attractive, more entertaining?
It's a tough one. Like it really is a tough one. myself and Don Lennon would do a lot of under 20s commentary every year when it comes around for the Six Nations, and the rugby that those guys play is just incredible to watch. It's a bit like schools rugby and senior cup, right? Guys who are encouraged to play, coached to take the chance, throw the pass, take the risk in the event it might happen. But it does seem like when you come out of that stage that their coaches do the exact opposite. Don't take a risk. Don't take the 50-50 pass. Don't take the chance where if it doesn't come off, you'll be absolutely hammered. And like, I don't know, like what, look, I don't like Jeremy. I've no experience of playing at that level, so it's not for me to comment, right? Mm-hmm. But I know what I watch, right, and what I like watching. So this weekend, we're talking here on Monday night. Saturday night, we just watched Leinster against Munster, right? An absolute shite game. Let's call it spade what a spade. Mm-hmm. It was an awful spectacle, right? Munster didn't fire a jot. Like, you know, they didn't fire a jot. They were just wiped over. Leinster didn't even play particularly well. And I'm looking at what France are doing now. And you're saying, God, actually, that's the game that I grew up watching. That, I guess, the game that I started to play when I was a kid and coached. So, I don't know. How do you change the way the game is now? Because it's so much emphasis on strength and power. There's a 50-22 rule, which is being trialed in the Southern Hemisphere now, where if you kick the ball from inside your own half and find touch inside the opposite 22, you get the line out, which encourages maybe more players to be in the backfield. I don't know what it is that you change the game now, but you know, it's definitely it's not the game that I grew up watching. I heard a brilliant interview with Joe Schmidt as part of Old Belvedere's new clubhouse that they opened in honor of Ollie Campbell. So Ollie Campbell, it's the Ollie Campbell Clubhouse now. And Ollie had arranged a series of interviews, one of which was with Joe Schmidt and Andy Dunn, who does a lot of work for News Talk, and he's a brilliant analyst as far as I'm concerned. He was asked to MC with Ollie Campbell about, I guess, the way the game is going now. But Joe Schmidt was the guest that morning. And he asked Joe, Andy Dunn asked Joe, I said, look, you know, in terms of the way you're going now and the way that you coach the team, you know, it's not the most exciting. It's not the most, I guess, advantageous for the skills that the players have now because it's reliant on possession and not making mistakes and players not making mistakes and whatever. And Joe Schmidt said back to Andy Dunn, well, look, Andy, like back in like 1995, 96, 24% of the ball was in play. Nowadays, 42% of the ball is in play. So which do you want to watch? And Andy said on an interview with Joe Malloy and Off the Ball, he said, I wish I'd been able to think longer about it, but at the time I didn't really have an answer to him. But now that I've thought about it, what he would have said to Joe Schmidt on reflection was, well, actually, Joe, I'd rather see the ball in play for 22% of the time that I did back then, rather than in play for what it is at the moment, which is pick and go, smash into contact, and very little creativity or open space running. I'd rather watch the 22% of what I saw back in the day rather than watching what we're watching now. And I completely agree with that. So how do you change that? I don't know how you change that. The players are bigger, they're fitter, they're stronger, they're faster. Defensive systems now, the new laws around the ruck basically allow very little contest for the ball, the breakdown. So players don't commit players to the breakdown and they just fan out and there's no space. So how do you change that? Like, you know, you don't want to go too far so that you're encroaching on what rugby league is, because rugby union obviously is rugby union. But equally, I think you need to do something to allow players have more space and time in the ball and more opportunities to pass it and to run it into. And that's not there at the moment.
Speaking of changes, CVC have gotten involved in Six Nations now. What's that mean for you? Are you going to be behind a paywall next year?
I don't think so. I would have thought so about 3 weeks ago, but we've had some really encouraging news that CVC see free-to-air rugby as a core fundamental in how they want to grow the game. So I know that RTE are in for the Six Nations this year. It'll be for next year. It'd be great to get it. I know that we're in for the Pro 16 with the South African sides coming in, and I think we're in a reasonably strong place to challenge for there. CVC, if you look at their model for cricket and for Formula One, you can be very cynical and say that, you know, they literally bleed every sport dry and take whatever penny they can get out of it and then they move on. But they were on record in the last 2 weeks as saying that they see free-to-air rugby as a huge cornerstone of their ability to grow the sport and make commercial revenue from the game.
From the games, yeah.
When I heard that, up until that, I was very pessimistic, and I would have said, no, we haven't a chance. But that does, if they followed through on that, it would seem like, and maybe the reality of that is that maybe if it's Virgin or RTE, we might only get the Ireland games free to air in Six Nations, but so be it. And whatever else you have to watch, you might have to go to Amazon or whatever it is. But if they have that as a kind of a fundamental cornerstone of their vision to maximize the game of rugby union, then I think that's a huge positive.
Give me your favorite Greystones memory.
Probably Valencia.
Oh yeah.
Not the first time I went, because Mark Doyle cleaned me out with a royal straight flush on a hand of poker that literally it took me about 6 years to pay it off. But just being with those guys in Spain, socially, with Vincent Byrne and all the guys who would have worked in the rugby club, all of the guys that would have literally kept the club going through those times, and behind the bar, at the door, Kev O'Kelly, Dooler, Vincent, Ricky Wogan, Trev, like Dwayne, Jeff, Barry, like they are the guys that when I came back from Waterford as a young guy trying to get back into the club, they were the guys who put their arm around me, as they did with everybody who came into the club, and said, come on, a few pints, and literally, made Greystones Rugby Club what it was for me. And in turn, Vincent was a huge driving force of that. And, I still see Willie every now and then, and Anto, and like, I miss Vincent, and I think everybody does. Mm-hmm. But Justin is the most like-for-like replacement and the best appointment that Greystones Rugby Club has made. And I'm saying this
dead right, yeah.
Like from the heart. Justin is the reason why we are all now back in the club.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when things open up again, lockdown happens, we will all go there. I would be our first port of call, and Justin is the reason for that. The same way that Vincent was before him. And so, if Justin is there, we're on the right track. We'll get back what Greystones Rugby Club was, and we have got that back. And that's what it's all about for me. And look, and like going to see the first is brilliant, and going to see the success on the pitch with all the lads and is brilliant. But for me, Greystones Rugby Club is about the people that I met, the people that I still meet, and the fun that I've had. Off the pitch as much as on it. So that's what Greystones Rugby Club is to me. And if you want an embodiment for that, you only have to look at my younger brother Pierce.
Yeah.
And how they have treated him and how they have been to him. That's Greystones Rugby Club. So yeah,
dead right.
Pretty good.
Dead right. Last question. I know you haven't prepped for this, so it's going to be a real one. Who's the best player you ever played with?
The best player I ever played with. Lyle Hazelden.
Oh wow, yeah, very good. That's a lovely choice. Yeah. Hardest nails.
I'm telling you now. So people are talking about the Lions tour this summer, right? And I saw that was it Ugo Monye or somebody had put up pound for pound in the Six Nations, the hardest, toughest player in the Six Nations has been Hamish Watson from Scotland, right? Pound for pound, the hardest, toughest player I ever played with was Lyle Hazelden. And okay, maybe I'm a bit biased because I love the guy and I loved him and Ross and Craig, and again, they've been unbelievable to Pierce, but Lyle Hazelden was one of the toughest players I ever played with, and the most humble, literally humble guy I've ever met in my life. Him. Lyle
Brilliant.
Hazelden.
That was a really nice choice. Yeah, he owes you a pint now anyway.
Yeah, and it's not Dooler. Dooler, if you're listening, it's not you. It would have been you if you'd thrown that switch pass properly, but you didn't, so you can piss off. Okay?
Brilliant. We'll leave it there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And listen, thanks, man, and I wish you all the best and well done on a brilliant series. Thanks, man.
Thanks so much, and thanks for doing round two. Really appreciate it. It was great having you on. Fantastic. Thank you.